John chapter 11. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus from Bethany, of the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary who had anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. The sisters therefore said to him, saying, Lord, behold, he for whom you have great affection is sick. So John is introducing these characters, and apparently they're well known because he's telling the story before he tells the story. And so there's this whole thing of like, hey, you guys all know about these people. This is a well-known group of people. And as we keep reading, you'll find out why they're well known. Like, this is a well-known group of people that we're here, and we're giving this here, okay? But when Jesus heard it, he said, this sickness is not to death, but for the glory of God, that God's Son may be glorified by it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. When therefore he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 days in the place where he was. Okay, so he gets word that Lazarus is not doing well. And he loves Lazarus and his sisters, and so he cares a lot. And because of this, he stays 2 extra days. What? Like, this should be giving you some weird, like, wait, what's going on? Okay, but John is telling you, no, he's doing this because he actually cares. He actually cares. There's a reason why he's doing it, even though it don't make no sense right now. Okay, and I drew a little graphic today just for the fun of it. Okay, just to keep track of things. Okay, so what we'd have here is that Jesus hears about this sickness, and then he waits 2 more days. Okay, so that's our timeline so far. Okay, right. And he has already told the disciples that he's not going to die. This is not going to end in death. This is not ending in death, but this is for the glory of God that we're doing this. Now, Jesus loved him. Okay, so he stayed there. Then, after this, he said to his disciples, let's go into Judea again. The disciples asked him, Rabbi, the Jews were just trying to stone you. Are you going there again? They're like, hang on a second. We just left this area, right? We just left this zone, and you want to go back where they're trying to kill you? Okay, and again, just for the fun of it, okay, we've got Jerusalem, okay, which is right here, and Bethany is like within a couple of miles of Jerusalem. And so Jesus is like, hey, if we're going to go back to this area where Lazarus is and see him, we're going to be going into, right next to Jerusalem, okay, right next to Jerusalem. This is where it is. And they're like, are you sure you want to do this? Okay. Jesus answered, aren't there 12 hours of daylight? If a man walks in the day, he doesn't stumble because he sees the light of this world. This should be bringing back all these memories of Jesus saying, I am the light of the world, right? Like, hey, I'm still around. I'm still here. Okay. But if a man walks in the night, he stumbles because the light isn't in him. He said these things, and after that, he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going so that I may awake him out of sleep. The disciples therefore said, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. The disciples, once again, taking Jesus completely literally at his word. Like, Jesus is like, he's sleeping. And they're like, he's sleeping? That's fantastic. He was sick. If he's sleeping, this is really good news. Now, Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he spoke of taking rest in sleep. So Jesus said to them plainly then, Lazarus is dead. Remember how he said this wasn't going to end in death? Well, he's dead. Okay. I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, so that you may believe. Nevertheless, let's go to him. Wait, what? Okay, like this is some weird stuff that's going on. Thomas, therefore, who is called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, let's also go that we may die with him. Okay, so Thomas and Didymus, they both mean twin. So the guy who looks like the other guy, he's the twin guy. Okay, Thomas. And he is kind of dour here. He's kind of pessimistic. Like, okay, I guess Lazarus just died. We're going to go with Jesus, who's going to get I guess we're all going to die. Like, we're all just going to go and die. But he's willing to follow Jesus there. Like, that's the other thing about Thomas here, is that he's like, hey, Jesus, if your plan is that we're all going to go die, I guess we're all going to die. That's fine. Let's do this thing. Okay? Right. So, when Jesus came, he found that he had been in the tomb 4 days already. Now, Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 50 stadia away. Okay. So, again, We have this where Jesus heard about it, he waited 2 days, and then he arrives and discovers that he's been dead for 4 days. So by the time that Jesus hears about it, Lazarus is already dead. Okay, this is important, all right? He's already dead by the time that Jesus gets the news, and he waits 2 extra days. Okay, and again, we are reminded that Bethany is right next to Jerusalem. Okay, it's right there. Okay, many of the Jews had joined the women around Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. We're increasing the tension because many Jews from Jerusalem are here. All right, and what you do in Jewish culture in this day, and I don't know if it's still true today, I have no idea. We in the West are terrible with grief. But other cultures have much better practices. Here, I believe it's called sitting Shiva, and basically you bring food to the family and you just sit with them for 7 days. You're not trying to like comfort them and make them feel better and say, oh, in the great by and by, everything's gonna be, no, you're just there with them in their grief. And you bring them food because that's also important, right? And so you're just there with them, and they're not supposed to leave the house except for to go to the gravesite. Like that, you just sit there and you just wail and you cry and you just feel the loss, and you have people from your community surround you and sit there with you in that loss, and so that's going on. But this is also building tension, right? Okay. Then, when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary stayed in the house. And so what you do is you go out to meet an important person coming in, right? If somebody's coming to visit you, you go out. And, this happens a lot when friends are coming over and like you see their car pull up and you like run out. You're like, hey, it's so good to see you. Okay, but this is actually like there's far more formality with this where you go out to bring them in. It's a welcoming thing, which by the way, based off of my studies, it sounds like that's more of what the rapture is all about. It's not about us getting whisked away to the great by and by, but rather about going out to meet Jesus, to bring him in to where he is king, right? And really establishing his kingdom here as it has already been started, right? And being like, nope, welcome, you're welcome here. Okay, but that's total sidetrack, okay, from this thing. Therefore, Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. So Martha's like, look, Jesus, I know that you can heal people. So like, if you'd been here, you wouldn't have gotten sick. And then she says this thing about, I know that whatever you ask God, God will give you. And the commentaries, I think, are rather split on this. I wasn't able to come to a real good conclusion of like, what is she meaning? It seems like we're not totally sure because of the conversation that follows. So let's just read that. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. So we like to think about religious people as like a monolith of whatever group that they're part of, right? Like all Christians are the same, which is so not true. All Jews are the same. No, that is also not true at all. Because during this period of time, you have people like the Sadducees who don't believe in the resurrection. They don't believe in it at all. And then you've got this other group, like Martha, that she's part of, and she's like, no, definitely there is a resurrection. Everybody comes back, like we're coming back, but that's not till the end. So Jesus says, hey, your brother's going to rise again. And she's like, I know, Jesus. We all know about this. This is what's going to happen at the end. But I'm sad right now, okay? Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will still live, even if he dies. Whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord. I have come to believe that you are the Christ, God's Son, who comes into the world. When she said this, she went away. There's this weird thing, right? Where like Jesus is like, your brother's going to rise again. She's like, I know. And he's like, I'm actually the resurrection. People don't die with me. Do you believe this? And she's like, yep. I'll go get my sister. Like, what is this conversation that's happening right now? Like, who's not, she's not getting something, or she thinks that she's getting, I don't even know. Like, this is really interesting. Okay. So when she said this, she went away. She called Mary, her sister, secretly, saying, the teacher is here and calling you. So whether this is, we're not going to disrupt the morning party that's going on right now, and I'm going to come sit, and you're going to go out. or if it's a, hey, Jesus like is potentially in danger, so like let's keep this on the lowdown. Like whatever it is, they kind of switch places, right? When she, this is Mary, heard this, she arose quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her, that's Mary, in the house and were consoling her, when they saw Mary, that she rose up quickly and went out, following her, saying, she is going to the tomb to weep there. Notice the tension. Again, here's Jesus. He's hanging here. He's waiting to come in, and the people from Jerusalem are now here, and they're following Mary because they think that she's going to the tomb, but actually she's heading to Jesus. Oh no! Therefore, when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. She says the exact same thing as Martha. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews weeping who came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled, and said, where have you laid him? They told him, Lord, come and see. This word troubled is interesting. I haven't been able to figure out what exactly the connection is here. My commentary's pointing me here, so I'm taking you here. I couldn't find the text, the words that brought it to this, but this is what they said. Okay, so there's this thing about how the glory of God appears in the tent of meeting, right? And this is all coming off of this thing where the people are brought by Moses out into the desert, and they're like, we don't have any food. Why'd you bring us out here to die? And Moses is really sad. And then Yahweh's glory appears. And Yahweh says to Moses, how long will this people despise me? How long will they not believe in me? For all the signs which I have worked among them, I will strike them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than they. By the way, then all the congregations threatened to stone them with stones. This is a passage we just did last time, talking about the people deciding that they were going to stone the leaders of Israel in the past. And yet here is this passage that is linked somehow to this passage in John 11, this greatly troubled. Like, it's not just like, hey, I feel bad. Like, there's this anger element to it. There's this disturbed at their lack of faith, at they don't get it. And I think that's what the connection is, but I couldn't find the word connection. But the idea is there of, we've already been talking about glory, seeing God's glory. And God himself there says, how long will you not get the signs? How long will you not understand this? 35. Jesus wept. Shortest verse in the Bible. You can memorize that one very quickly. If you want to start memorizing passages, go there. John 11:35. You're doing great. Okay. The Jews therefore said, see how much affection he had for him. Some of them said, couldn't this man who opened the eyes of him who was blind have also kept this man from dying? Which would have required Jesus to know about it before he heard about it, which he might easily could have. Okay, but he didn't hear about it beforehand, so he waited two extra days. Okay, and now they're out here. And by the way, this whole thing about, opening the eyes of the blind and stuff, that happened in Jerusalem, right? That's already happened, and people got mad enough to try and kill Jesus then too. Like, people are mad. The tension is high. Jesus, therefore, again, groaning in himself, came to the tomb. Again, there's this here, in addition to being sad. But there's this, okay? Now it was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, take away the stone. Now, for those of you who have read your Bibles before or been to church on Christmas or Easter time, this should be setting off bells for you. But let's just put that in our back pockets for a minute, okay? This whole idea of like a tomb in a cave with a stone rolled across it, and let's roll away the stone. Just stick that back in your back pocket, okay? Martha, the sister of him who was dead, he's dead, said to him, Lord, by this time there is a stench, for he has been dead 4 days. Remember, Jesus waited 2 extra days because to make certain that it's been 4 days, because at this point in time, he's decomposing. We're not just dealing with like someone who's mostly dead. And there is a later tradition which may have been in place here. It's hard to make connections historically, but later on, there was a belief that at day 4, you were all dead. But before that, you were only mostly dead, which means you were partially alive. Okay, so if that was true at this time, which I don't know why John would be pulling out this 4-day thing if it wasn't for this very specific idea, Lazarus is all dead. He's not mostly dead, but partly alive, right? Like we can't miracle max this, okay? Instead, he is all dead and you can't do anything for him. He's decomposing. He's rotting in his grave. His sister even knows this. She's like, don't do this. Jesus said to her, "Didn't I tell you that if you believed, you would see God's glory?" So here in Exodus 16, they are journeying from Elim and the congregation, they're going up out there and this is all happening. And the congregation is murmuring against Moses and Aaron. And they're saying, "We wish that we had died by Yahweh's hand in the land of Egypt, where we sat around meat pots, where we could eat our fill of bread. But you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill us and the whole assembly with hunger." Sound familiar? Then Yahweh said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread down from the sky for you." And then it's this whole thing about manna and all that stuff. And then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, "At evening you shall know that Yahweh has brought you out of the land of Egypt. In the morning you shall see Yahweh's glory, because he hears your murmuring against Yahweh. You will see God's glory." So they took away the stone from the place where the dead man was lying. Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you listened to me. I know that you always listen to me, but because of the multitude standing around that I say this, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And as a kid, I always thought of, he's yelling so that Lazarus would hear him, or to make it really extra dramatic for Lazarus to come out. But he's yelling because there is a multitude of people around him from Jerusalem, a place where a bunch of people want to kill him, okay? There's a group of people around him, and he has just prayed out loud. He says, "Hey, God, thanks for listening to me. Actually, I already know all this. This is for everybody else. This is for all these other people, okay? Lazarus, come out." He who is dead came out, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face wrapped around with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Free him and let him go." So he comes like bundled up out. They perform not exactly mummification like the Egyptians, but they have a similar, like they wrap the body and you put spices on it to make it not smell as bad and things like that. And then eventually after a year, after everything's decomposed, you take the bones, you put them in a box and you stick that in the ossuary and all that stuff, right? So you've got that. But like he's wrapped up and he like waddles his way out. Who knows, right? How does this work? Like crazy stuff. Free him because he's tied up, all right? Which again, just put that in the back pocket, like, grave clothes, like coming out of a tomb. Like let's just keep that in the back pocket there. Okay, so how do people respond? How do people respond to this? All right. Therefore, many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw what Jesus did believed in him. Awesome. But some of them, went away to the Pharisees and told them the things which Jesus had done. So that everybody's like, "Wow, somebody raised somebody from the dead? That's incredible." The chief priests, therefore, and the Pharisees gathered a council and said, "What are we doing? For this man does many signs. If we leave him alone like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." Oh man, we can't let Jesus keep doing stuff. This is terrible for us. Our future is totally at stake. But a certain one of them, Caiaphas, being high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you consider that it is advantageous for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation not perish." Okay, so this idea of like a high priest that year, might just be a way of saying this is the time frame in which Caiaphas is high priest. And Caiaphas is high priest for actually longer, I believe, than like any other high priest during this time. Normally, though, this is a lifelong vocation. You get high priest status, you're there your whole life. But the Romans were messing with the Jews. And if you had a high priest that they didn't like, or that was, doing anything that made them a little bit nervous, then they just installed a new high priest. And Caiaphas was willing to work with the Romans. And so they let him keep doing his thing for a while. And he's like, look, you guys don't understand. Like, yeah, it's true. They're going to totally take away our power. They're going to destroy everything. It's going to be awful. So that's why this guy has to die. This guy needs to die for the nation's sake. We got to kill him. That's what we have to do. Now, he didn't say this of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but that he might also gather together into one the children of God who are scattered about. John's like, well, okay, none of us like this guy as high priest. We didn't think he was doing a particularly good job, but he was high priest. And because he had that role, God actually used him prophetically here to speak truth, even though he didn't even realize he was doing it. He said the right thing, even though he didn't even know what he was talking about. And what he was talking about was what Jesus was going to do. Again, John expects you to know the end of the story. Okay? Yeah, all right. So from that day forward, they took counsel that they might put him to death. Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but departed from there into the country near the wilderness to a city called Ephraim. He stayed there with his disciples. And actually, I was just learning about some stuff, and Ephraim, there might even be more textual stuff. I didn't prepare that for this lecture, but there might even be more with this Ephraim thing. I've been learning about 1 Samuel. I'm going through that right now, and there's some interesting things potentially with that. Okay. Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand. Many went up from the country of Jerusalem, up from the country to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. Then they sought for Jesus and spoke with one another as they stood in the temple. What do you think? That he isn't coming to the feast at all? Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had commanded that if anyone knew where he was, he should report it, that they might seize him. We're setting up the tension even more. Oh my goodness. And by the way, we've already done this, right? This has already happened where Jesus has kind of stayed away from the public space. People have mocked him for it. His own brothers have been like, dude, who are you? What? Are you actually somebody or not, right? People have been like, is he coming? Is this guy coming? Is he showing up again? And now, once again, they're like, hey, is he coming? Is he going to show up? Because they're ready to seize him, which again should also be bringing us back to Jesus's birth and all the stuff with that, where it's like, hey, where's that guy born King of the Jews? When you find him, let me know so I can come and see him too, because I'm gonna kill him. Okay, this has been going on before. This is all repetitious. We've seen this before in other passages. This is a thing. Well, now the tension is high after raising someone from the dead. Pretty awesome.